Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a little 5-game slate here on a Monday night. And this one taking a look at the Knicks headed to Utah, taking on the Jazz, still without Rudy Gobert. They do have Donnie Mitchell, so we'll take a look at some of the stuff inside this one. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com as well, with some best bets and player props in there for you. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video. We'll look to start off the week super hot with, per usual, as we've been super hot on the last 3 Mondays. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to FDPicks.com or DKPicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Knicks are down to +7 now. It opened around +8.5, and that total has crept up a little bit from 218 to 220 or so. We got 4 other games here on Monday night. We got the Miami Heat -6.5 at Washington. That total's been bet down to 207, very low there. The other game we break down is Raptors -2 at the Hornets. Total around 225 where it opened. We talk about some betting angles with there, including probably taking the Raptors to stay hot. The Warriors are -12.5 at OKC with a 211 total. The Suns are -8 in Chicago. Bulls are on a back-to-back, and we don't know if Zach LaVine's going to go after sitting out yesterday's game with a back injury. So that will be key before you bet on that game. And then we have these Knicks. Really don't have a quality road win since November, I guess, in Philadelphia. They've beaten the Hawks twice, but I think both times the Hawks were missing a ton of guys due to COVID. The Knicks have been able to stand up at home, pull out a couple wins against struggling teams, but it's a really tough spot to back them here in Utah. It's more about the fact that Utah is slowly getting back to what we've expected from the Jazz at home, maybe learning how to play without Rudy Gobert a little bit at this time. He's missed so many of their last games, and we saw it come together with a 125-102 win against the shorthanded Nets, dysfunctional Nets. But really the only way I think you expect the Knicks to cover 7 or 8 points here where the Nets failed is just an indictment of how dysfunctional the Nets are right now. To just say that, oh, well, the Knicks, they're going to come into Utah and do a much better job. And I don't really buy that. But for me, I'm not totally sold on Utah covering these big double-digit spreads the way they did last year. You look at their numbers against the spread, and they're not very good at home. That's because they usually have a spread of 8 points or greater. They're 14-16 with an average margin of victory of 8 points. That is after a win here. But I do definitely think that they can win this game. And you look at their offense leading them when Donovan Mitchell has played. The recent game log at home, there's a notable dip here in terms of their lack of scoring. It's because Mitchell was out, and then there was that dud he had against Cleveland, team that seems to know how to guard him, and then in the game in which he, I think, suffered that concussion that kept him out. Other than that, they've been hovering between 112 and 125 points in basically every home game, and that's including, tough matchups against the Warriors, against Dallas, teams that do not give up much, even on the road. So I think the Jazz at 113.5, you feel pretty good about the over there. You just don't know how the Knicks are going to fare because their offense is so herky-jerky. It is not at all reliable on the road. And Utah, even without Rudy Gobert, can defend the paint pretty well. I would take a teaser here. I would definitely use this as a prime opportunity to get the Jazz down so that they basically just have to win by 3 or 4 points, and then get that over down to about 215 because I trust the Jazz to score around 115. I think they can get over their team total. That's what the Knicks are allowing here over their last 4. They happen to have gone over in 8 of their last 11 matchups with Utah. But I don't know how I feel about the Knicks offense getting much more than 100. So that's why, a predicted score in that range would still get you over 215, kind of a way to hedge just in case Utah gets into a closer game, in case the Knicks offense does come along, then you would still be able to hit with that teaser and hopefully get the over as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks have been all right against the Jazz in Utah, against the spread dating back, to the last 3 seasons or so. But at the same time, like, this Knicks team is not even the same Knicks team as a couple seasons ago, much less last season with Jay Randall right now, and especially with those expectations. Yeah, the total, I loved opening at 213.5. I missed it until this morning where it was already at 219. So yeah, it personally scares me a little bit, especially because of how much the Jazz have actually gone under at home recently, and playing against the Eastern Conference. I mean, their last 6 games at home gone under, but especially a great example is that Nets game that you mentioned with Donnie Mitchell back. I mean, you've got to look at why they were going under, why they weren't scoring as many points. Donnie Mitchell wasn't in the lineup for about 8-9 straight games. Gobert missed 6 of those games as well. He's still out. Their offensive rating surprisingly goes way down without Rudy. Obviously, it goes way back up with Donnie Mitchell in the lineup. Huge differences there. Obviously the defense is hugely impacted as well when you've got Rudy Gobert out, which is why you might consider the total under or total over rather with Rudy Gobert not playing in the game and us knowing how important he is to their defense. At the same time, I feel like this is a moment in time for a team total, because I do feel as though the Jazz are going to be able to get theirs. The Knicks, we know how bad they are in offense as they've been losing 8 of their last 10, second worst offensive rating, but their defensive rating is also down to about 11th. Whereas for most of the season, it was, at about 5th or 6th. So even there, you mentioned they've been going over in their last 4, and it's a huge part of that is their dip in their defensive rating while not being able to do anything on that offensive side of the ball either way. Julius Randle's still struggling despite, them having a really nice performance. He and RJ both dropping over 30 against the Lakers on Saturday. They blew a 21-point lead. That's got to be completely demoralizing as well, even if they did, manage to get an early lead in this game. I think it's Donnie Mitchell being able to score. I think it's the Jazz being able to get 113.5 on their total. It's really just similarly, like I said, to the Nets game where the Jazz dropped 125, did their part to get over the 230 total in that game tremendously. They couldn't even get that with the Nets scoring that 105 mark there. Obviously, Kyrie scoring 15 did not help. Everything that the Knicks are doing right now, playing at the slowest pace, not being able to shoot, third worst shooting percentages, both across true shooting, effective, however you want to look at it. They're still trying to score from 3 with the 4th highest percent of their field goal attempts coming from 3-point, and still not being in their 8th highest in the amount of points coming off of those threes. They're having to score in those ways. They also need to score by getting some defense to offense, at least, a lot of turnovers and points off a fast break, both top 5 in those categories, and how they're scoring their points. But they can't really generate any consistent offense if they're not hitting threes. We've seen them in the Lakers game come out in the first half, shoot 55% from 3 as a team. All of a sudden that's not there. Those aren't hitting. What's their go-to now? Julius Randle isn't bailing them out. Derrick Rose obviously isn't in the lineup to bail them out. Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin, 2 guys that the Knicks fans, speaking from my own heart, really would love to see in the game a ton more, both getting less than 16 minutes a game in this recent 4-game stretch of losing. I don't really know what the plan is for this team moving forward. I would have liked to take them because of their recent success against Utah and that spread keep climbing and that total keep climbing. I would have loved to zag, but Utah wins with Donnie Mitchell is a different team that we're used to over the last 15 games where they were struggling. They lost, they failed to cover in 11 of their 15, but that's not who this Jazz team is now that Donnie Mitchell is back. And I think he's going to continue to come out on a huge tear. Would feel pretty good about taking his overs, that over for the Jazz team total as well. And really, if you want to, the 8 points, don't love it. A teaser feels great. If you want to get that down, like you said, get it closer to about minus 110 on your money to get that over down to about 214, get that Jazz line down back to 4. I think you feel really good about anything to do with those sort of types of bets tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned the Knicks being a 3-point shooting team, and that's not the type of approach you really want to have against Utah, which historically has been the best 3-point shooting team the last couple seasons. Then the Knicks happen to give up the 3rd highest percentage of their points off threes. So I'm looking at it. I could talk myself into a blowout here. The Knicks are on a front end of a back-to-back here. They go to Denver tomorrow, both games at elevation. Team that does not win on the road at all, as we mentioned. Team that actually scores the fewest paint points per game, and that's where Utah has struggled most without Gobert. And if you're going to watch it live, the Knicks are dead last. I mean, they're 27th in points per game overall, but they're dead last in third quarter scoring. and not very good down the stretch either, especially on the road. So if it's kind of close at the half and you can get the Jazz then at -3 on a spread or at decent value on the money line, I think they pull away in that second half. I think it's an easy offense to adjust to guard the Knicks right now without Derrick Rose, without anyone that really can beat you off the dribble in the backcourt. So I think Utah, even without a couple key guys out, they're going to continue to turn it around. They're still a Western Conference contender here, and they're still really, really good at home. It's still one of the loudest buildings, one of the best home court advantages there are. So, yeah, I definitely would just look at different angles to get Utah to win. There are some player performance doubles there. I don't know if I would go with Donnie Mitchell necessarily because he's kind of been cold against the Knicks in his last 3 meetings, but certainly capable of turning it around. And as you mentioned, this is not the same Knicks team that'll bruise up opponents and somehow lock them up. I mean, he certainly could turn it around and get 25 points in a win, 30 points in a win, and really just keep Utah's offense on pace while the Knicks, you have much less faith in.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, someone's going to have to score for Utah tonight. We got Jordan Clarkson and Rudy Gay both questionable right now. You don't see any player props up for them. Yeah, I mean, Donnie Mitchell is sitting at 24.5 points. You know, if you do think that they're going to get over that 113.5 total, still feels pretty low for him. Did drop 27 in that game against the Nets, much worse on defense than the Knicks on the perimeter even, but still, Donnie Mitchell, I'm not as worried about. The other guy, obviously, Bojan would be the next guy up in terms of scoring without Clarkson and Gay, especially in the lineup there. You've got to feel good about, like I said, somebody needs to score for this team, and I do think it's going to be, them getting points tonight. So I'm not too worried about Donnie's props despite some recent struggles against the Knicks. And then you've got to consider either Bojan or even Royce O'Neal, who still sits at 8.5 points, sitting there in the 3-point line, waiting for those corner threes, as you mentioned, the Knicks struggling in that department as well, so guarding there. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Check out those other couple videos we have for you on this little 5-game Monday night slate. And until we see you next, happy betting.